Namaskaram, good evening. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Kesavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutam Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Narayana Samarambham Vyasa Sankara Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru-Paramparam. To celebrate this incredible Guru-Parampara is really the reason why we organize this Global Festival of Oneness. This is the third year we are doing this. Thank you all for attending. And I have the unique privilege to invite my mentor, my guru, my good friend, and my well-wisher, Professor Dr. Prasad Kaipa. In fact, this topic was really the reason why he and I thought we should celebrate Adi Shankara not merely as a scholar, as someone who has authored several stotras and Puranas, but really celebrate his life as an entrepreneur and a leader, which is what I aspire to be. And it was that one conversation that eventually led to the launch of this Global Festival of Oneness. So Prasad Garu, really honored to welcome you today and looking forward to your insights. A brief background about Prasad. Prasad Kaipa was a thought leader and a top management thinker of Indian origin till 2019. His unique approach was in integrating approaches with brain research and spirituality and wisdom models. In addition to having advised and coached 130 plus C-level executives at Fortune 500 companies, Dr. Prasad used Bhagavad Gita framework and several interviews with CEOs to co-author a best-selling book, From Smart to Wise, in 2013. He founded the Center for Leadership, Innovation and Change, CLIck, at the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad, as well as he co-founded the Thai Silicon Valley's Entrepreneur Institute with over 13,000 participants over the last 10 years. Professor Kaipa actually says he is retired, but I don't think someone with his wisdom and his contribution to the world will ever retire. But since his retirement, technical retirement, he's working with several nonprofits focused on education and youth and enjoying reflecting on his learnings from the Indian spiritual wisdom and focusing on inner transformation. Prasad Garu, you may begin your talk now, titled Adi Shankara as an entrepreneur and a visionary leader.
Thank you very much, Ravi Garu. It's wonderful to see you. And yes, I think 3 years ago with Nitin Sridhar and many of wonderful friends like Harikiran Garu and Anuradha Garu and Kavita and Sanjeev Garu, various people, we started this. It is great to see this in the third year. So today, my topic is going to be Sri Shankaracharya as an entrepreneur and a visionary leader. I would like to start with looking at the current state of what makes entrepreneurs successful. Recently, when there was a survey that was done with over 300 entrepreneurs, what makes them successful and what makes them in the current situation to really launch their entrepreneurial startups. These are some of the characteristics they have identified. One of the first one they talk about is the ability to take risks. Even though everything looks really bad, for them to say, I will leave my job where I make hundreds of thousands of dollars and even take some loan on my house and start this venture, just like several other people, including the host here, who has started his own startup. And the second thing is to be able to respond to an opportunity that is available where the customers feel the need and feel that the competition is not providing appropriate products or services, and have an initiative to go and do what they need to do, meet the people, ask for funding from friends and family and venture capitalists, and the ability to learn from mistakes repeatedly, what we call resilience, creativity, visionary leadership, because people come to you and join your company only when you have a vision that is bigger than what other people have got. And you can see things so clearly that other people would love to follow your vision and share your vision and contribute to making that vision a reality. So if you look at similarly, there are several other things like ambition, self-confidence, good communication capabilities, focus, finding right people to become your executive team members, having the fortitude when you repeatedly fail in something, to be able to stick to your vision, to be able to stick to your startup with passion, compassion, and commitment to not only to you and your team, but also to the customer. These are some of the things people say. So in addition to that, if you really want entrepreneurs to be successful, anything else that you can think about? Maybe you might want to look at it and say, what are some of the things that make entrepreneurs successful, not only in the Silicon Valley or United States, but also in Bangalore or Hyderabad or Chennai or anywhere else you have seen? You might want to explore that, especially because in recent days, even in India, there are lots of companies who have become like $1 billion startups, what we call unicorns. I was told that there are over 100 unicorns in India itself. So entrepreneurs are somebody that every child, every young man, not only that, even every executive dreams about. Now, why do I think if these are the characteristics entrepreneurs have got, how does Shankaracharya, who lived several hundred years ago, to become entrepreneur, and how does Shankaracharya drove what he did and himself as an entrepreneurial and visionary leader? That's what we are talking about. Why do entrepreneurs actually do what they do? Majority of the times, entrepreneurs think purpose is the underlying driver for them. So I will talk to you a little bit in terms of how Shankaracharya actually had the underlying driver to make Sanatana Dharma to spread, especially when there was a large amount of people converting to Buddhism at one time, when there was a confusion regarding the Hinduism, where some people felt the rituals had become much more dominant. Because of the rituals becoming dominant and majority of the people not understanding the kind of rituals that were being done, and they were being led by only a certain number of people, the Shankaracharya came up and talked about how Upanishads, Gita, Brahma Sutras, and several of these could be understood by everybody, and he retold the meanings of some of the Prasthanatrayam, the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and Brahma Sutras. In addition to that, he wrote several Prakarana Granthas. In addition to Prakarana Granthas and commentary for Brahma Sutras, Gita, and Upanishads, he also wrote many of the stotras. And so he really brought Hindu Dharma to become something important for people in India at that time. So just like entrepreneurs ask a question, what is it that I want to do? What is my vision? Shankaracharya also had a vision to make the Sanatana Dharma the dominant Dharma in India, the Bharat at that time. And he allowed for majority of the people from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, by walking up and down 3 times, he was able to unite all of Hindu Dharma and all of Hindus to come and think about it as one unified, way. And that's what he did. How did he do that? What was his strategy? What was the way in which he grounded his vision? And when did he do that? What was the context in which he did what he did? And who are the people who became his executive team members? The 4 major, what you call mathas in 4 corners of India were created by his disciples. And we will talk about the customers and who were the people who were competing for attention at that time, and how did he create the buzz. All of these words which are prominent at this moment, of course, for almost 30, 40 years, it has become important for entrepreneurs to build this. This is something that Shankaracharya has done, and that's what we are going to talk a little bit more about. In this image, you see the Panchayatana Puja that he has revived and actually created the Shanmata approach that Shankara has brought to prominence, and he created the Smartha approach to doing things. He started his entrepreneurial journey very young. When he was probably 8 years old, he decided, after listening to Nachiketa's stories and after listening to Dhruva's stories and some of them, he got convinced that he needs to take on a role as a monk, not necessarily grow up to become grihasthus like many other people. And he really begged his mother to give him permission to take sannyasam at a very young age. When his mother did not allow him to do that, there was a situation that got created in his life when he went to take bath in the river. A crocodile came and held him, and he requested his mother to give him permission to become a sannyasi in that apparently last few minutes. But as soon as the mother gave him the permission, he was able to get out of the mouth of the crocodile, and then he became the sannyasi. So he was able to really fight for what he wanted to do and started the journey, facing whatever obstacles that generally face many people who wanted to do sannyasa at a very young age, and went to find a right teacher and a right mentor. As many people who are entrepreneurs know that for them to be successful, they need to have a right mentor, a right coach. Without appropriate mentor, it is very difficult for people to know how to make and what kind of right decisions to make in the early stage of entrepreneurial success. Similar to that, Sri Shankara went to find a right mentor for him, the Govinda Bhagavadpada, whom he found as the right teacher for him. And that teacher helped him to find appropriate problem to work on. For an entrepreneur, while he or she can take on different problems to focus on as his companies or a startup to focus on, he decided, talking to his teacher, revitalizing Sanatana Dharma in the ancient Bharata is the appropriate problem for him to focus on. And he realized at that time, his customers, the people in Bharata Desham at that time were divided between multiple sects, and they were having so many different schools of worship. Some people were worshipping Surya, some people were worshipping Devi, and some people were worshipping Vishnu, some people were worshipping Shiva, some people were worshipping Ishtadevata, whether it is Ganapati, or whether it is Kumaraswamy, or whether it is Dattatreya. Like that, there were so many different schools of worship at that time. And the focus was a lot more on the Mimamsa side. So there was a lot more focus on the rituals, karmas, and the karma marga was the dominant approach. And only people who knew Sanskritam, who knew many of the mantras, and majority of the population were not necessarily always knowing what to do and how to do. So they were focusing on karma marga a lot more. So the opportunity for him was to recognize people are becoming focused more on Buddhism, which looked simpler, which focused on the breath and focused on the body, and did not necessarily have a Veda Pramanam as a part of their approach. And there were lots of different kinds of matas that were available at that time, Jainism, Buddhism, and other methodologies that did not have Astika focus, focused on the Veda Pramana. So he wrote, in his very short life of 32 years, he focused on Upanishads and wrote bhashyas to them and made them available to people to learn and focus a lot more on the Vedanta, asking some fundamental questions about who they are and what the Jiva and what the Jagat, what the Brahman and those relationships are, and began to focus on the Nirguna Brahman as well as the Saguna Brahman. And he helped people to really recognize the oneness of the Jiva and the Brahman. And he focused a lot more on the Advaita path. And doing that as his approach, as his entrepreneurial startup message, Advaita as the dominant message, he helped people to refocus and clarify. While he was getting population to focus on the Upanishads, Brahma Sutras, and Gita, he had opportunity to somewhere recognize that he needed some refocus in his own life and clarity in his own life to come in. A story was also something that is prominently told. It seems, now Modi ji has created the Kashi to become beautiful in a very different way from the narrow Kashi that people knew for time eternal. The Varanasi, the most famous, the holy city in India, used to have very narrow ghats going from Ganga to Viswanatha Swami temple. And as he one day took the bath in Ganges, and then he saying Sivoham, Sivoham, with disciples, he was going to the temple, Kashi Viswanatha temple, to pray. That morning, opposing him on the other side, there was a Chandala who was coming with 4 dogs, and he was blocking the way to a certain extent. And then Swami said to him, Gacha, Gacha. So he asked him to move away, to go away, so that all these people can go to temple and do the worship, pray and offer their worship. Then Chandala, instead of getting out of the way and then allowing this Dvija, allowing this Yati, allowing this sannyasi to go, he stopped and asked him, whom are you asking to go away? Is it my body? Or is it the consciousness within that? Annamayat annamayam athava chaitanyameva chaitanyat yativara duri kartum vanchasi kimbruhi gacha gachaiti. Why do you say go away, go away? Is my body, Chandala's body, where I might have eaten meat, I might have eaten different kinds of things, is my body, and which is also made up of Panchabhutas, just like your body, is that different from you? Annamayat annamayam. So you want my body, which is made up of food and Panchabhutas, to be inferior to your body? Athava, if not, chaitanyameva chaitanyam. You want my consciousness to be different from yours, and you want my consciousness to move away from your consciousness. You think you have a different consciousness that is superior to mine. Why do you want something to move away from another? Are you not the one who actually talk about the Advaita Vedanta, about oneness, about Jiva and Brahman? Why are you saying that? And then after this rough-looking shloka, he actually goes into beautiful shloka where he compares some of the Avicchinnavadam and the dominant Advaita Vadas, where he talked about how in a pot, whether it's a golden pot or whether it's a mud pot, whichever pot is carrying the water, or if you look at that pot, the space that is inside that pot is exactly the same, no matter whether it is golden pot or a mud pot. When we talk about that space, just like the body can be a Chandala's body or a Yati's body like that of Shankara, they are no different. Then he brings another Drishtantam. He talks about the sun reflecting in the Ganges, gloriously, beautifully golden sun reflecting on this eternal and holy Ganga, or Chandala Vati Payaha. So if you look at after a large rain, around the various houses, the huts where the Chandala lives, if there are small amount of water remaining on the ground, even in that water remaining on the ground as a small mud pot, or it's not mud pot, sorry, it's on a ground, a small hole in the ground, or various puddles that are in there, even in those puddles, the sun reflects. Is the sun reflecting in the mud puddles near Chandala's house? Is that sun different from the sun reflected in the holy Ganges? So this is what you call, the various philosophies and various approaches that people use, and even Shankaracharya himself uses to talk about the oneness of the Jiva and the Brahman. He brought in, and then he challenges him. At that time, Shankara recognizes whatever he has been teaching the other people are same mistakes, that same thing somewhere. He had a small amount of either in a practical way there was a little bit of a difference between what he was teaching and what he was doing. And he recognizes a person who knows this and who can stop Shankara and teach him this again, put a mirror to him and remind him he will be none other than the Brahman himself and the Shiva himself. And he falls at the feet of the Chandala and saying the Manisha Panchakam, Chandalaha astu, Dvijaha astu, Chandalostu Satudvijostu, Gururityesha Manisha Mama. This Advaita Siddhanta, whom he knows so firmly, who knows, he is my Guru, he falls at the feet of Chandala and speaks about this Manisha, the firm conviction that he has, and it becomes wonderful, beautiful Panchakam, the 5 slokas of Manisha Panchakam, that is so elegant that comes out of it. And then, of course, Chandala shows up in his real form, which is the Shiva with 4 Vedas as the 4 dogs. So, in more ways than one, to a certain extent, Shankaracharya himself was able to see, because he is considered to be the Ansha of Paramasiva himself, the Dakshinamurti himself. So in that respect, he, just like an entrepreneur, sometimes when he comes to venture capitalists, when he goes to raise the fund, he comes up with different business models. He proposes some of them, sometimes completely not aligned with what his primary focus is, what his passion and his purpose is, and sometimes people help him to reform and rethink about his, so that they can do what they need to do. Once he became more successful in finding various people like Mandana Misra, Padmapada, and Hastamalaka, and some of them, with those 4 major disciples from 4 parts of the world, 4 parts of India, he created 4 mathas in different parts of India to head it up. What is so unique about he doing this? What is interesting about that is, Mandana Misra is supposed to be from Mahishmati, I think, in the north. And he, when along with his wife Bharati, when he became the disciple of Shankaracharya, he was one of the very, very well-known, dominant scholars. He became the Suretswaracharya, and from the north, he came to Sringeri to set up the Sarada Peetam. And he became, his approach is, I think it is called Yoga Siddhi. I need to remember exactly the name of that, what Mandana Misra Suretswaracharya wrote. And he focused on Yajurveda in the Sringeri Sarada Peetam. And he came from north to head up the southern Matham. Then he took, similarly, the Padmapada, who was from south. He actually went to Badri to start Jyotirmat, focusing on the Atharva Veda. And to a certain extent, even now, Keralites are the priests in the Badri temple. So, so he took a person from the south to head up a north temple, north to come in and head up the south Matham. Similarly, Totakacharya and Hastamalaka, they headed up Badri and the Puri, and Dwaraka and the Puri, focusing on Samaveda and Rigveda, creating the Dwaraka Peetam and Govardhana Matham. So his team actually had the diversity. He was able to unite people from the north, south, east, and west to learn and work with people from different approach, people from different traditions. And his creativity even extends to the next level, where even though they all are focusing more on what you might call the Shiva focus, but they keep on saying Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. So in some respect, he really looked at the Shiva, Kesava to be one and the same. It is not the namas and the rupas and gunas that are important, but the Brahman, Nirguna Brahman, is the one that we need to focus on, because ultimately who we are and all the jiva is not different from the Brahman. So the idea of Jiva Brahma Ekavadam is the one that he really proposed, and that has become the most thoughtful and most comprehensive and successful integration of Hinduism under the Advaita philosophy. So in several ways, he has shown innovation and creativity to integrate Shaivism, Vaishnavism, and come up with, in addition to that, come up with Shanmata tradition. As I mentioned, and as the image that you see here, some people worship Devi, some people worship Kali, some people worship Shiva in the Linga Rupa, some people worship the Vishnu, some people worship Ganesha, some people worship Kartikeya. So he looked at all the six of them, and he came up with an approach that the Smartas do. It is called Panchayatana Puja. And he came up with the tradition so that even within Hinduism, people who worship different Saguna Rupas to come together and worship all of them and come up with a very interesting approach to take it forward. To summarize, I want to start with the name Shankara. It is important to recognize there are several people use Shankara, whether it is spelled as S-A-N-K-A-R-A in English or S-H-A-N-K-A-R-A. It is to be pronounced as Shankara. Sa, Sa, Sha. Sha is from the back of the mouth. He is not Shankara, or he is not Sankara, like from the tip of the tongue, front of the mouth. He is Shankara, like Seni, like something that we need to say appropriately. He was a great social entrepreneur and a visionary leader. His vision was like that of Badarayana, like great sage Vyasa. Just like Vyasa has united all the 4 Vedas and organized the Vedas, Shankara has organized various matas and various sects, various pujas or puja vidhanas that were there, various ways of Hindus were thinking about, and the influence of Buddhism that was dominant, he was able to integrate. And another great thing which he did was, he was one of the persons who called actually Buddha as one of the avatars of Shankara, by integrating Buddha as the gods, Hindu gods, to a certain extent reduced the tension between Buddhism and Hinduism and brought all the practices together. And to a certain extent, the Shankara's Advaita philosophy and his approach to social changes that he brought about. And in his young life of 32 years, he went up and down India 3 times. He wrote over 190 works. Actually, some up to 300 works are ascribed to Shankaracharya. He wrote Prakarana Granthas. He wrote Bhashyas to all the major Upanishads, Dasopanishads, Brahma Sutras, and Gita, as I said before. In addition to that, he did a lot of wonderful stotras he wrote, whether you talk about Kanakadhara's Thavam or whether you talk about Saundarya Lahari. So there are some beautiful writings, and some of the things which you read and when you listen and when you recite, it brings tears to your eyes, and your body feels like that the Advaita is not just a cognitive philosophy, you can experience it within you. So Shankara is not just a great visionary leader, but also a great social entrepreneur, much, much, much ahead of his time. We talk about entrepreneurs becoming very, very important at this time. I believe Shankara is one of the, maybe not just one of the, he was the first entrepreneur in India who brought so much of wisdom and so much of uniting capability. So let me stop at this and take questions, bowing my head down to great Shankara. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prasad Garu. This is really wonderful. I could see myself in every slide as you are describing, because as entrepreneurs, and you have been an entrepreneur too, so you have also gone through the journey, which is why you are such a great mentor, right? So we are waiting for people to post their questions on the chat, but we can use this time to have a conversation. I think one of the things that you mentioned entrepreneurs are really good at is overcoming challenges. Can you think of an incident or anything in Shankara's life where he had a major challenge, and how did he overcome? And that could be a good model for entrepreneurs today.
Sure. Many times when entrepreneurs these days go, they may get funding for the first round, but then that sometimes the company doesn't pick up, or the competitor comes up with a challenge, or the investor comes up with a major challenge and asks a question for which the entrepreneur might not have an answer. Similarly, the Shankara essentially had the problem when he was debating with the Mandana Misra, for example. When he was debating with the great Mandana Misra, there were not that many people who could be the judge, who knew enough about what they were speaking, what Mandana Misra and Shankara were speaking, to declare one of them to become this, what you might call a successful at the end of the debate. Because at that time, the debate ended. When it ended, if Mandana Misra were to be successful, Shankara were to become the disciple of Mandana Misra. Because Shankara succeeded, defeated Mandana Misra in his arguments, Mandana Misra was supposed to be the disciple of Shankara. But his wife Bharati, who was the judge at that time, posed a very interesting and a difficult question for Shankaracharya, who became a sannyasi at a very young age. She asked questions about the Dampatyam, about you might call certain questions which are known only to samsaris. And because Shankara never got married, he did not necessarily know the answers to them through his experience. So he asked for permission to come back with some answers and asked for some time. And Shankara went and recognized at that time Kashi king had just passed away. So through Parakaya Pravesam, the Vidya that he knew, he went and entered the body of Kashi Maharaj, and then he spent some time with the Kashi queens as well as the people, and learned what he needed to learn about the subtle answers to Srimati Bharati's questions, and then came back and answered them and won over both Mandana Misra and Bharati Devi. This was an incredible challenge. It required creativity and innovation, and a significant challenge because when the ministers of Kashi country recognized that actually there is probably a great Siddha or a great Mahapurusha has entered Kashi's king's body, because the way in which when the Shankara was ruling as a Kashi king, there was subiksham everywhere. There were wonderful things, and there were proper rains, and there were all the things were going so well. So they actually went and tried to look for a body, and then they wanted to burn away the body so that Shankara will remain in Kashi king's body forever. Actually, even though that body was being protected by his disciples, those people forcefully took the body and started burning. And at that time, Shankara came back, and when he recited the Lakshmi Narasimha's Karavalamba Stotram, his body became full and he was able to come back. So he encountered challenges much bigger than many of our current entrepreneurs face, and he has proven himself to be a remarkable, not only a visionary leader, but also a creative entrepreneur who can find proper solutions to people, the competition that was challenging him.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you. You used the word social entrepreneur, and I think today, unfortunately, social entrepreneur, people think, did he abolish slavery? Did he solve a drinking water problem? Or did he solve an education problem? So can you clarify it? Because there are some questions about emancipation, which is a totally Western idea. There was no concept of liberation from slavery because India was not like that in those days. So can you maybe expand on why you are calling Adi Shankara as a social entrepreneur? Maybe a definition different than what most people think it is.
Yeah, definitely. You use some very interesting things. He necessarily did not do what we call the emancipation, or he did not necessarily free slaves or different type of thing. But he brought different kinds of freedom to people. The kind of freedom that he brought were in many different ways. One, he brought the freedom from infighting within the Hindu larger context. The infighting between the karma approach, doing various karmas, or various bhakti approach, the Gnana Yoga, Karma Yoga we talk about, or the Bhakti Yoga, he united all of them. He freed people to recognize that the knowledge and the devotion are not two different things. If, as we can listen in the Vishnu Sahasranamam introduction, Sri Rajaji talks about the knowledge and the devotion are not two different things. They are exactly one and the same. So even though he talked about Nirguna Brahma, he freed people from all castes. Now, like as I mentioned about the Chandala necessarily becoming the one, and he can be a guru to a Brahmin or king or anything else for that matter. He was able to make people to free their mind from various kind of Chandasa traditions that we were focusing on. And we also had a lot more conflict within the religion because of the way in which people looked at themselves. The Varnasrama, in the Varnasrama, people looked at, instead of recognizing the Chaturvarnam Maya Srishya, as in Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, all of them are my own. There was some dominance. Some people felt more arrogant. Some people felt that they could suppress other religions because of their vidya or because of their knowledge. He really helped people to see that you don't have to have any of that type of stuff. So and as I said to you again, like a North Indian, South Indian, East Indian, West Indian, he was able to unite all of them. He was able to unite different religious beliefs, religious practices. And so in more ways than one, at a very early time, he was able to help that everybody, whether they are from higher caste or lower caste, whether they are from east or south, whether they worship Vishnu or Shiva or Kali or Ganesha or Surya, the Pratyaksha Devata, any of them. He says that all gods are one and the same. And so that's why they say Tattvamasi. When we talk about Tat as a Sarvanama Padam, is the best way to describe God, because God is beyond the names, God is beyond the forms. The consciousness behind the name God as the generator, operator, and destroyer is a nameless, formless Brahman. And that Brahman is not different from us. That's why the Mithya, the Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha has become his dominant teaching. And that's what frees all of us to go towards moksha, towards the liberation. So he worked on the ultimate liberation of human beings from the samsara to next level. So I would call him one of the social entrepreneur par excellence in that respect.
Fantastic. In fact, every business should be focused on society.
Yes.
Right? There may be a few, you can make money, but it cannot destroy a society. It has to uplift the society. And so most people think social entrepreneur means non-profit. You just solve a water problem or a healthcare problem. It is a societal upliftment challenge. And there is no reason why every business should not be a social business. And in fact, that's why there is a new B corporation in today's world to really say, hey, I exist to make lives better for everybody, not just for a few investors. Do you agree? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. We have a great example in India. One of the largest family houses or a family business that started in India is one such organization. Probably everybody knows about Tata Sons. Tata Sons is a wonderful organization that started by Parsi people. Tatas, to a certain extent, they own, they are the one who created the Tata Consulting, now Air India, Tata Steel. There are over 110 companies, Taj Hotels, Taj Group of Hotels. Interestingly, they make money in these individual companies, but 75% of what they do is for the upliftment of the Indian country that is used. So to a certain extent, you can think about like a non-profit owning all these for-profits. So in some respects, just like a Tata Corporation is an organization that is for the country's growth, not necessarily for the individual owner to make tons of money and put it in their pocket. Similarly, the B Corps and several of these corporations are becoming for benefit. That's called a B corporation, means benefit corporation. They benefit the larger good. And not only that, not only in entrepreneurial corporations, even big companies are now beginning to recognize in past 15, 20 years as the purpose-driven corporations rather than just the money-driven corporations. People are recognizing, of course, now after COVID, but even before that, people are recognizing that their passion, purpose, and the meaning are the ones that increase the employee engagement in large companies and the entrepreneurial companies. And I know my own daughter did not want to work for any other company. Like, she worked for you. Primarily after she graduated from Berkeley, she spent several years volunteering as well as working with, organizations that had a redeeming purpose, like you focusing on education, you focusing on mentoring, And some of these kinds of a larger overarching goals, when they become meaningful, then lots of young people, whether it is the Gen X or, actually more like Gen Z and millennials, all of them are excited about fulfilling their purpose. The young people today, they don't want to wait till they retire to focus on the purpose, to gain meaning. They want to do meaningful work right now. So that means right now, if you want to build a company, if you can have a redeeming purpose, there is a social value. If you can think of a purpose higher than your own money, your own security, chances are you will attract right kind of people, and they will show a lot more employee engagement than the current 33-35% employee engagement that many of the companies show.
Thank you. In the last few minutes we have, I just want to talk about the second part of your talk, and because you also talked about how Adi Shankara is such a great leader, and I totally feel that today we need him to come back, or we need someone in his avatar to come back to unify. We are seeing the same challenges in India as well as around the world. People fighting for no reason. Why can't they sit and talk and really figure this out? So whether it is, within an organization in the world at large, I think leadership is definitely missing today. The conflicts that we see around. So are there one or two, words of wisdom that you can share with the world? What are the traits of leadership from Adi Shankara that the modern young people should keep in mind to become leaders like that?
There are a couple of ways in which I can answer your question. Right now, we talk about everything about Web 2.0, everything else. The Shankara 1.0 was the avatar of Shiva, and who came in and who did what he did in the in the short age of 32 years. He accomplished much more than many of us do it in 100 years. Probably for the 21st century, Shankara 2.0 may not be a one person who will come in. He may not be a male, he may not be a young man, he may not be born in India, he may be born anywhere in the world, and it may not be he, it may be she. Actually, a radical thought I would suggest for the 21st century, especially because we, at that time, that the Bharatam was much larger than the Bharatam, that is the India that we experience at this moment. We only know about Pakistan and Bangladesh, but at that time, some of the Afghanistan, some of the Thailand, some of the Singapore, Malaysia, the India had relationships much broader than it has got at this moment. And at that time, Akhanda Bharata Desam, it was called. It was not broken, Akhanda, it was not broken into pieces. But for Shankara to be today available, the most powerful way I can visualize is awakening the Shankara in you today. I think I talked about it a couple of years ago, saying the best way Shankara can be reborn in 21st century is to look at yourself and see what can you learn from Shankara and what are some of the things that you can take away from Shankara's life and make them your own, and look at the current problems wherever you are, in whatever organization, whatever society that you live in. Some of the principles of Shankara can be brought. What are those principles from Shankara that you can take? Number one, certain amount of what you might call a gnanam, what you call a samyak gnanam. So he was a sattvika person. He had, like in Bhagavad Gita 18th chapter, you talk about the way in which you can have the gunas, the three gunas, sattvic, rajasic, tamasic, allow how to do what you need to do. if you talk about Gnanam, Karma, Karta, Buddhi, Dhruti, Sukham, if in all the 6 of them, which are required for a project management, the Samyak Gnanam, that means having a unifying the perspective. That is something we already know, like a Purnamadam Purnamidaha is something that we talk about, the holistic vision. So first, if you are an entrepreneur or if you are in 21st century, if you want to follow Shankara's philosophy, begin to recognize that Jagat, Jiva and Brahman are one and the same. Start with that. So start with the unifying vision for that. Like we talk about climate change, that could be one area. You can talk about sustainability is something that encompasses climate change and everything else. So like that, first Samyak Drishti. Then Karta Bhavana, let it go. I am not the one who is doing it. That means when you are in your organization, you can give the role to somebody else. Like for example, when an entrepreneurial startup gets taken over by large company, or when you are ready to go public, or when you are ready to sell the company, sometimes the founder CEO is replaced by a more mature person who can deal with multiple product lines, multiple customers come in, and then the CEO becomes either a CTO or becomes a sales head or somebody else. Many entrepreneurial companies cannot deal with that. Why? Because they say, I was able to build this company from $0 to $50 million, and now you are telling me to take from 50 million to 200 million, you need somebody else to come in and take over this company. They don't know diddly squat about my company. They don't know about the product as much as I do. They don't know about the customers as much as I do. You are asking me to take a smaller role. Their aham, the ego does not really tolerate. So when they are given a smaller task, instead of looking at it and saying, I want the company to grow. If that person is the right person to lead, I need to let it go. But they can't deal with it. Kartrutva bhavam and bhoktrutva bhavam, when it comes from rajasic qualities that actually destroys themselves, they are either kicked out of the company or they take a minor role and they begin to bring the Veda bhavam within the company and create large amount of issues. Instead of that, if you can have that Advaita bhavam, and if you can recognize I am not the one who is doing it, and if they can let go of that, and in India we call it Karta leadership. Let go of it and then take it to next level. If we can do that, that will be good. Similarly, the actions, who needs to do it in your organization? You don't have to be the one who, because you have built the company, you know everything, but give the role to somebody else and then empower them instead of always coming and trying to say, I know this better. No. You don't know marketing about this. I know how to market this. What happens is, instead of you becoming a person who is smarter than you, you hired him as a marketing head. But now you try to prove that you are a better marketer than the guy whom you hired. That actually leads to you not being a CEO. You are actually going down to becoming a CMO, and you are creating a competition, and you are not able to develop them and develop the company. You are actually destroying yourself. This happens quite often. So again, Sattvika karma is something that is needed. Similarly, Sattvika buddhi is needed. And so how to make right decisions for the company based on intuition, based on data, based on emotion. All of this we need to do. So similarly, I talk about wise leaders today actually bringing in the whole idea of other thing also, like a fortitude, the sukham, what motivates you, all of that. If you try to do that, then you become a Sita Prajna Lakshana. You develop that Sita Prajna Lakshanas within you. A leader who has that. Shankara is one such leader. Shankara had always the integral vision for the country, integral vision for the Hindu religion, he took it beyond the religion. He made that as Sanatana Dharma. That's why we talk about when Hinduism is not a religion, it is a Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana means something that is eternally there. He made Sanatana into Nitya Nutana. Every day it is fresh. Every day it is green. Evergreen philosophy rather than a dividing religion. I think if we can bring that type of a oneness into what we are doing in an entrepreneurial situation or in a team that we work with, in an organization that we can work with, then we can awaken the Shankara context, Shankara feeling within you. Then you can actually resuscitate Shankara Bhavana into not only you, but also people around you. And then the 21st century, we will not only look at Akhanda Bharata, we will actually look at Bharata becoming the leader for the Akhanda Prapancham. So that is the vision that we can hold, and hopefully we can achieve by looking at the greatest thinker in the social entrepreneur context that we have in Shankara Bhagavadpada.
Prasad Garu, thank you so much. You basically are giving us a fantastic message that if for the conditions we are in today, Shankara need not be locked into a body, but that essence can be a thought, can be a way of working, can be a fantastic framework that can inspire millions of leaders around the world to create that kind of transformation that Adi Shankara was able to do several thousand years ago. So thank you once again for your very, very insightful presentation. You and I have had so many wonderful conversations, and we could easily talk for another 3 hours and still not get bored, because you have so much wisdom to share, Prasad. Really an honor to have you as one of the architects of this global festival, and for you to participate year after year, sharing your wisdom. So thank you very much. And we now end the evening session on Friday, the May 13th, and we'll see you fresh in the morning at 7 a.m. on Saturday, the 14th of May. And this is a special weekend edition where we are bringing Srimati Nima Majumdar, and she has been discussing Prashnottara Ratnamalike, where Adi Shankara has posed answers to a bunch of questions. And the topic is so deep and profound that we felt we should discuss it over multiple weekends. So we've already had 2 sessions, and tomorrow morning, the 14th of May, in the morning will be the 3rd session. Please join us. Tell your friends, because Adi Shankara is not a person, it's a thought process. And the more you tell your friends and family members, and the more people feel the Adi Shankara essence in them, we can truly create that unity, diversity, and transformation and societal harmony that the world badly needs right now. So, Dr. Prasad Kaipa, thank you once again for your presentation today. Hari Om.
Hari Om. And I would like to remind again, Shankara is not just about talking about Shankaracharya. Maybe people in your life, whenever you have named somebody, whenever you heard about name Shankara or Shiva, you should say not Sava, not Shava, Shiva. Shankara, Shankara, from the middle of the mouth. Not Shankara or not Sankara. So remember that. Maybe if you can remember every time you pronounce the name Sa, Sha, then maybe you'll remember Shankaracharya in your life all the time, just by right pronunciation. Thank you very much, Ravi Garu. I enjoyed
very much
talking with you, and have a wonderful, wonderful day and evening. Bye-bye.